A strike at major ports inches closer.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Schwab, helping people invest in ideas they believe in with Schwab investing themes, with more than 40 themes to choose from. More at schwab.com. And by C3 Generative AI, verified traceable answers, secure, hallucination-free, LLM-agnostic, IP liability-free C3.ai. This is Enterprise AI.
From Marketplace, I'm Sabri Benishore in for David Brancaccio. East and Gulf Coast ports are asking the federal government to force the union representing their workers back to the negotiating table. The International Longshoremen's Association is threatening to go on strike next Tuesday, and the U.S. Maritime Alliance, that's the ports, says the union is not bargaining in good faith and hasn't negotiated in months. Marketplace's Nova Safo is here with more. Hi, Nova.
Good morning.
So the two sides haven't met to negotiate since June. Why?
Yeah, they don't seem to agree on much, actually, Sabri. In fact, they don't even agree whether they've been talking or not. The union claims they have been communicating back and forth with the group that represents the ports, even if the two sides haven't been formally bargaining. And the stalemate appears to be over pay increases, though the details haven't been made public.
So now we have this new move from the ports. What are they trying to do?
They're asking the National Labor Relations Board to issue an order requiring the dock workers union to officially bargain again, get back to the negotiating table. The union responded by calling this a publicity stunt, and that's because the NLRB is unlikely to issue a decision fast enough to stop a strike from happening on Tuesday. It could take weeks.
So then as the clock ticks down, is a strike becoming more and more likely?
It is looking that way, especially because the White House has refused to intervene to prevent a strike. It has that authority, but it's standing firm for now. It has some breathing room to stand firm because analysts say a strike will cause only limited disruptions if it's short-lived. But we really can't say how long it will last, and that is the bigger question right now.
All right. Marketplace Nova Safo, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
After facing pressure earlier this week from an activist investment firm, Southwest Airlines has announced it's making some major changes. At its investor day yesterday, the carrier said it would shift some of its routes, add overnight flights, and do away with one of the main things that had set it apart from its competitors, its open seating system. Marketplace's Kristen Schwab has more.
Open seating and short domestic flights. Gary Leff at viewfromthewing.com says these hallmarks have kept Southwest Airlines ticket prices low and customers loyal until the last few years.
Southwest has found that they reached the limit of their model to a large degree, and that was really accelerated by the pandemic.
When everyone wanted to travel abroad, Southwest didn't fly overnight or much internationally. Then came the great holiday meltdown of 2022. Nearly 17,000 flights were canceled after a network failure. Industry analyst Robert Mann says people judge a carrier by their most recent trip.
Was it good? I'll consider buying it again. Or was it bad and I'll go look for another airline?
Southwest's changes could alienate their diehard customers, especially, says Leff at viewfromthewing.com, if the company becomes another airline in the flock of airlines.
The U.S. airline industry is largely homogenized, one that doesn't have a lot of product differentiation today.
He says this is what happens when an industry consolidates. The players in it take on the same strategies. I'm Kristen Schwab for Marketplace.
Prices in the U.S. increased just 0.1% in August, according to the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index. Year-over-year inflation was just 2.2%. That was lower than expected. Let's see how markets like it. Let's do the numbers. Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ futures are all up around 0.2%, with Dow futures up 86 points.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Amazon Business, aiming to help save time by offering smart business buying solutions so there's more time to focus on growing the business and less time doing the admin. More at amazonbusiness.com. And by Barron's Streetwise podcast, hosted by Barron's Associate Editor Jack Howe, offering insights each week on business leaders and trend spotters, available everywhere.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, says it has what it needs to respond to Hurricane Helene, which headed into Georgia overnight as a now Category 1 storm. But FEMA did not get the extra money from Congress it had asked for. And as Marketplace's Kimberly Adams reports, that shortfall will probably show up in communities struggling to recover from past disasters.
When paying for the rising costs of natural disasters, our tax dollars aren't just paying for the immediate response. Nora O'Brien is CEO of Connect Consulting Services, which helps businesses plan for natural disasters and other emergencies.
We're also paying for the short and long-term recovery. And those things are oftentimes much higher than the actual initial response.
FEMA's budget has to account for how much it needs to respond to emergencies in real time, like evacuations, shelters, and food, plus the costs associated with longer-term rebuilding and recovery.
So they try to gauge how much money to put in the disaster relief fund, and then, that typically runs dry because there are a lot of disasters.
Jonathan Bergquist is president of Bergquist Recovery Consulting, which helps communities get federal funds to recover after a disaster. And he wasn't surprised FEMA came up short this year.
I've been doing this for 15 to 20 years, and this problem has happened many a times because obviously nobody can predict how many disasters are going to hit in every year.
And when the disaster relief fund does run low, FEMA goes into INF mode, immediate needs funding, says Peter Muller, a senior officer with the Managing Fiscal Risks Project at Pew Charitable Trusts.
They delay anything that is not an urgent spending necessary for protection of life and property. And that means people return to their homes slower. It means that businesses will reopen slower. It also means that projects that are intended to reduce the impact of the next disaster are going to be delayed.
At a White House press briefing Thursday, FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell talked about what operating under immediate needs funding has meant so far.
We're already, through INF, $9 billion, close to $9 billion in projects that we have put on hold that we can't reimburse communities for.
Criswell said the agency will be able to pay that tab once the continuing resolution goes into effect, but without supplemental funding, FEMA will be back into INF mode as early as January. In Washington, I'm Kimberly Adams for Marketplace.
Our executive producer is Kelly Silvera. Our digital producer is Dylan Mietinen. Our engineers are Brian Allison, John Brewington, and Justin Dooler. In New York, I'm Sabri Benishore with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.